Hello everybody and welcome to Cabaret Secrets. My name's Gary Williams and I'm sitting with my friend Harold Sanditen, who's just told me we met through the venue that we've talked about a lot in Cabaret Secrets in London, the Crazy Coqs, because you run the wonderful new open mic night there, which at the moment is every Thursday night. Tell us how that started.
Well, I think it started because I planted the idea with Jeremy when he was opening the Cabaret Room.
This is Jeremy King.
Jeremy King, yes, who is the owner of the restaurant. And when Ruth, the programmer, finally got around to thinking of an open mic, she called me and she said, I don't know the first thing about doing this, and you're the only person I can think of that can help me, so let's do an open mic. And that's how it happened.
You obviously have a background in cabaret, but going back further, what were you doing before you actually started singing?
Well, I have had a few careers in my life. This is career 4 that I'm working on. The first one, I started out working in a manufacturing plant in San Diego. And actually, I started out working in a bank as a teller, and they asked me to be a manager of the branch, but I decided I didn't want to do that. I was doing an MBA at the time. So I went to work for this manufacturing plant. I then left and did an MBA, moved to Philadelphia from San Diego all the way across the country, did my MBA, moved to New York, became an investment banker. I did that for a little over 2 years, gave all of that up, moved to London, and hung up my shingle as a theater producer, which I did for 20 years before.
So before, up until that point, you'd barely sung a note, really. You'd been busy in the real world.
I'd been busy in the real world. I sang in high school, you know. That was where I did my singing. I was in musicals, I was in concert chorus in the Glee Club, and I suppose I always thought I would have a career as a musical comedy person, but I don't think I had the confidence to get on stage. So,
can I ask what age you were when you finally started to focus on music, the music business as your career? It's interesting for people listening that perhaps think it's too late for them.
Oh no, it's never too late. Let's see, if I am going to be 57 this year, then if you carry me back 2008, 5, 52. I was 52 when I started singing.
Wow, that's remarkable. And so you started singing, because I noticed on your website that you worked as a theatre producer, a UK-based theatre producer. Is that, you went straight into doing that from nothing as far as entertainment was concerned?
Absolutely. I had invested in a few shows in New York when I was an investment banker, and and I always loved the theatre. And when I was in New York, I had a very great investment banking job. Most people work 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. I worked literally 8 hours a day, 5 days a week. And when I would leave work at 5, I would go to the gym, and then I would go to the TKTS booth, half-price ticket booth, buy a half-price ticket. I saw every show in New York for 2.5 years. And that sort of gave me the bug. And that's
obviously you always had a great passion for musical theatre, for the arts, for music. So you came over to the UK, you start working as a theatre producer. I noticed that you've worked with people like Clive Owen, Anita Dobson, Steve Guttenberg, Kathy Burke, a friend of mine, Kim Criswell. These are a lot of big names. So you got right in there.
I did. I had some early success. The first play I did at the King's Head Theatre in Islington was called Being at Home with Claude. The movie that the actor was in was Jesus of Montreal. His name was Lothaire Bluteau, and at that point it was the top of the charts in London. And so we brought over a film star. It was an art film. I wouldn't say it was mainstream so much. So we did the show at the King's Head for 5 weeks and transferred it into the vaudeville for a limited run. And it was very funny because it would say things fresh from his success in Jesus of Montreal, and I think a lot of tourists thought it was a religious play. It was about a male prostitute who kills his client lover and confesses to the crime.
Did anybody want their money back?
But won't tell why. And I saw people cringing in their seats when it was at the vaudeville. It made me laugh so much. But so that one transferred very quickly. And then directly after that, I did a Shana Madel, which Anita Dobson carried into the West End. And then I was in Edinburgh every summer. We did a play up there called The Boys Next Door, which Kathy Burke was in.
Were you really the money then? Because the way that you're telling your story, you hadn't had, other than being a great fan of music and shows. You hadn't had much practical experience. So as a producer, you were putting up the money, helping to find the money, and just sort of holding the whole thing together, but leaving somebody else to do the artistic stuff like the direction.
I was pretty much an artistic. I didn't direct, but I was an artistic producer, meaning that I was always involved in casting. I was always working with the director. It was very much hands-on for me.
Sounds kind of self-indulgent.
Yeah, it is.
But you did it well, obviously.
My whole life it seems to be self-indulgent. I did it for 20 years, and I did it well, and I worked with a lot of famous people, and it was fun, but it ran out at some point.
And at what point did you move on to these cabaret conferences and these workshops? I noticed that you were flitting between New York and London with the moving more into the cabaret world.
Well, a friend of mine with whom I studied for my MBA in Philadelphia, we'd done something called the Wharton Follies, which is a spoof on life in the school, in the business school. And she was a singer, and we lost contact because she raised a family and had kids and moved out of Manhattan into Westchester, which was, to me, upstate New York, 30 minutes away, but it's upstate New York. It's not New York City. So in 2006, when I was taking a play to New York with Celia Emery, it was a monologue which we commissioned for her to do, and we took it to a theater called 5090's 59th. My friend Simone called me and said, you know, I haven't seen you for 15 years, but I'm doing a cabaret show. I've been studying and I'm doing a cabaret show, and I would really love you to see it. And I said, well, believe it or not, I'm in New York then. I went to see it, and that sort of, I got the bug.
You'll love a first song.
Exactly. Yeah. I loved the whole idea. I'd seen cabaret before, but I hadn't really understood what it was as a craft. So after having seen that, I decided that I needed to study. There was no way I was going to, you know, jump into cabaret without doing.
Was this, you were still thinking just in the terms of a producer, or at what point did you think, I can do this myself?
Well, when I saw her do the show, I thought I'd like to give this a try. And by that point, I was really realizing that my producing time was over, and I needed to know what the next direction was going to be. And singing was something I wanted to do since I was incredibly young. I just never did it.
You saw a cabaret show, you got the bug, and you decided this is what I want to do, so you embarked on a self-improvement cabaret journey, and so you attended cabaret workshops working alongside people like the great Andrea Marcovici, who's I'm a big fan of hers.
Karen Mason, Tove Feldschuh, Sharon McKnight, Faith Prince. I mean, the list goes on. I went to 3 cabaret workshops. One was in Italy, and it was very small, and it basically was a group therapy session. We cried from the moment we met in the morning till we broke for lunch. Then we would come back and cry again in the afternoon.
That's what happens when you sing Hoagie Carmichael songs.
It's what happens when you sit there and you have to analyze why you're singing a song and where you are in that song, and all of a sudden the emotions start flowing, and everybody tells a story that makes you cry. So the first one, I just thought cabaret was complete group therapy. I'd never been to therapy, so it was a perfect.
It's an interesting description for cabaret, because it's sort of like that, isn't it? Particularly for a performer when you're singing. When it's at its best, if you've got a room full of people all sharing the emotion that you're trying to emit from the song that you're singing and the way that you're singing it, it can sometimes feel like group therapy, can't it?
It is, and hopefully you bring people to tears, or bring them laughing for sure. But I mean, in a ballad, I love it when people cry. It's the best thing on earth to know that I have actually made someone cry, but for the right reasons and not the wrong ones.
Or we can say laugh as well. Laughing's also good. Yeah. Just any kind of emotion. I'm glad to get any.
Exactly.
Let's go back to the open mic night that you're running at the Crazy Coqs, because you must have, I assume, attended a lot of open mic nights yourself when you were learning the craft.
I attend a lot in New York when I go to do my show there.
Still now?
Still now, yes. Because
and were they helpful before, when you were learning to go along and to perform? And was it something that you realised the value of from personal experience?
Oh, absolutely, because, you can't be out performing all the time when you're starting out in a new career. I mean, where are you going to perform, and who's going to come see you? So the only way that you can start getting your sea legs is to get out there and sing in front of an audience and see, how you are, how they react to you, to try out new songs. I remember the first time I do a comic version of Me and Mrs. Jones. It's Me and Mrs. Jones, and it's Me and Mr. Jones.
I've heard it. It's wonderful.
And it's Me and Mr. and Mrs. Jones. And I came up with the idea sort of right before I went to Steamboat Springs and studied with Andrea Marcovici. So the first time I ever did it in public was in her little workshop, and she couldn't stop laughing. You know, everybody was laughing at it. So I'd never performed it in front of a group of people. I went off to Birdland when I was in New York. Billy Stritch was at piano.
Oh, wow.
I give the music to Billy Stritch. He starts playing it. I, of course, can't see his face, but my friend who's there is telling me he's just dying with laughter as, you know, the story unfolds.
I did love it when I heard you sing that, and I wondered where you'd got that from, and it's wonderful that you created it yourself.
Yeah, well, I come up with some really pretty weird ideas, I have to admit, sometimes. I do a very, what I think is a very funny version of A Boy Named Sue, the Johnny Cash song, but I do it with an RP accent.
That's funny.
My daddy left home when I was 3. He didn't leave much to Mummy and me. And I was almost sick with, I had Giardia's, a really bad stomach bug when I was here in London, and I was going off to study at Yale with these illustrious people. I postponed my trip to New York by about 6 days, and I was on a train, completely delirious, on my way up to New Haven, where I was supposed to meet this whole cabaret group of people. And I was almost asleep when the idea came into my head, you know? So I think it's, you know, maybe illness and delirium help.
That's great. So you were learning yourself from performing at open mics. What do you think open mics have to offer for new people coming into the cabaret world? Why is it that they're so important?
Well, it gives you a chance to try out material. You know, if you don't know if something is going to be funny or isn't going to work, it gives you a chance to try it out in front of people. It gives you the opportunity to actually perform in front of a group of people. I mean, that's the first opportunity you need. Where, as a young performer, where do you get to perform? I mean, we create work for ourselves in cabaret. We can create work for ourselves. And it can be very lucrative if you...
Can it? Oh.
Well, it can if you have a small... Yeah, I know. It can also be incredibly expensive. But, you know, if you create a small show with only a piano, and you do it in one place where the rent isn't expensive, and you sell 100 tickets, you can make some money. Mm-hmm. You can make a little bit of money on it. But the thing is, most people don't even know the entrepreneurial side of it. The fact that I was a theater producer for 20 years made it so easy for me. That transition of producing my own shows was piece of cake. Mm-hmm. It's like the back of my hand. I know exactly what to do. It doesn't take me a second to think of the time frame of how everything needs to be put together. So I was very, very lucky.
What can people expect when they come along to one of your open mic nights?
Well, they can expect a group of people who are incredibly supportive. I call it a safe zone. And I tell people it's a safe zone. I don't want people to feel like they can't get up and try something. And even some of the bad singers, and we're very lucky that we haven't had many. I mean, in the 2 months it's been going, not even one hand can I count the number of people that shouldn't have gone on stage, which to me is amazing. But they can expect support, a supportive atmosphere. If they're good, they might even expect to get some work. In the 2 months we've been doing this, 4 people have gotten jobs from having come to sing there, which is amazing.
So it's like a showcase as well.
It is a showcase. It's exactly what it is.
And it's a place where if you're performing, anyone performing at the open mic, they can invite other people to come along. If they've got somebody that may be thinking about booking them, they can say, well, come along, you can see me sing a song, tell a joke, tell a link, a little bit of patter, and see what you think.
It's a perfect place to do that. Absolutely perfect place.
Because it's a beautiful room as well, isn't it? So it's a very stylish place to bring somebody along to entertain them. You're showing yourself off in a very stylish West End venue.
And then you can do what a lot of people do on their CVs. I don't say that I've appeared at the Crazy Coqs. Yes. I see this on people's CVs all the time, that they've appeared someplace. Yeah, you did an open mic there. I can read between the lines. But you can say that because you will have appeared on stage at the Crazy Coqs. You can take a video of yourself performing there if you want. I mean, there are 100 things you can do to use it as a promotional tool, too.
Do you have any tips for people that are thinking about doing it and a little bit nervous about it? Do you have any tips on how they should approach it, what sort of material they might choose, or how they should come prepared? Presumably there's a small band, a pianist at least there.
We have a piano and a bass. So at minimum, you need to bring a piano chart that the bass player can read over the piano player's shoulder. In an ideal world, you'll bring two charts, one for piano, one for bass.
And the guys are used to doing that, aren't they? They're used to sharing and sort of making things work, even if it's not the best chart in the world. They're great musicians, aren't they?
They're terrific musicians, and I'm always continue to be amazed at their abilities because they do jazz, theater, cabaret, pop, rock. Michael even told me if somebody brings light opera around, he'd give it a whirl.
That's Michael's your
Michael
musical
Ralston.
director. Michael is playing the piano. Lovely guy. And I suppose one important tip for people coming along with the music is certainly just to make sure it's dead clear, because there's no rehearsal time, is there?
No rehearsal time. You get about 15 seconds to discuss.
Literally, you're not exaggerating.
No, literally. When the person is finished before you, I give every performer the opportunity to promote themselves, to tell if they have upcoming gigs, what they're doing, and I make a point of asking them and trying to eke it out of them so that we can help people promote, because that's something I've missed when I go to open mics. You get up and you sing and you go, and nobody knows, why you're there. You're in New York doing a show. I'm there because I want people to know they can buy tickets to come see me somewhere else. So while that person and I are talking, the next person literally has 15 seconds to speak to Michael and to Jonty, to give them the groove of the song, to show them the charts, to give them the rhythm of it, and to go. And, it always works out. I've never once seen something where it's really gone pear-shaped. It's amazing.
So they should come along with a clear, some music that's very clear and straightforward. Is it important for them to say something? Is it expected that they would introduce a song or tell a little anecdote, or would you rather them not and just get on and sing?
It depends. If I have 18 performers to get on stage in 90 minutes, I would probably prefer them not to have the chat and the patter. But I also don't really have a problem with it if they bring it along. I don't want to keep someone else from singing because someone else wants to try out their chat and patter. I think the maximum time that most people sing would be 4 minutes, maybe 5.
That they're on the stage all together.
Yeah, it's not a long period of time. So when you figure that out by 90 minutes, which is how much time we have for the open mic, that's 18 people. And so
I suppose another thing they should be prepared to do is to hand out their business cards afterwards if anybody shows an interest.
hand out business cards, come with leaflets for shows that you're doing. We're happy to sell CDs if people have CDs that are coming out or they have an existing CD. Anything you can do to help promote yourself.
And it's like you said, it's important to be aware that it's a supportive environment. It's not good to come along with an attitude of, oh, it's just about me, and come along, do your bit, and then go. The idea is that everybody supports everybody else and maybe learns something from the other performers as well.
Absolutely. You learn. I find I learn more from watching other people than I do from getting up on stage. And that's good and bad. You can see when you see a bad performer and they do something you don't like, you know not to do it. If you see something that someone does you love, it's a great opportunity for learning.
And it must be a fantastic opportunity for networking as well.
Fabulous. Really, really great opportunity. Everyone seems to become Facebook friends, and every week I take photos. Oh my God, it drives me crazy. I'm trying to figure out who's going next. I don't put them in order. You don't come in and get in order, because I mix jazz and theater. I mix the styles up so that we don't end up with 5 musical theater songs in a row and then 6 jazz ones.
You're sort of emceeing it, aren't you, on the night?
I'm MC. I'm a traffic controller, basically.
Yes.
Getting people on. I do sing 2 songs. I sing the first and the last song. Yeah. But yes, people should stay around. Now, it is 10:30 to midnight, and sometimes there are last train issues. And when people need to get on stage early, they usually let me know, and I always accommodate it so that they can get up to sing. Yeah. But the longer you can stay, the better, because, if you're the last singer going on and everyone is left, it's no good for you, and that could be anyone, You never know if you're going to be first or last. Just because you signed up first doesn't mean you're going to sing first. Yeah.
So it's every Thursday night at the Crazy Coqs, 10:30. till midnight, and people don't need to contact you beforehand or anything. They just turn up on the night at about, what, 10 o'clock?
10 o'clock.
And find you.
I'm in the room from 10 o'clock, usually sitting at a table along the banquette at the back with my handy pad of paper, ready to take the name and ask you what song you're going to sing and your style. I ask the song not so much because I really care, but because if there are two people who are singing the same song, at least I can nip that in the bud and let people know. I kind of frown on overly emotional, heartfelt ballads because they sometimes can bring the mood of the evening down, and it's always nice to keep it going. But having said that, the last 2 weeks I sang too.
Well, you can do what you like. It's your night.
So I have to rethink that a little bit because they didn't seem to bring the mood of the night down, and I actually love them. I love heartfelt ballads. I just think sometimes it's not the right place for them. Upbeat songs are usually probably better.
All right, let's talk about advice, tips, help for people that are planning on and want to record their own CD. You must have learned a lot in the 2 albums that you've done now.
Funny you should say that. When I decided I wanted to make my first CD, I didn't even know where to go. So I'd been studying jazz with Claire Martin.
Oh, it's one of the best.
I know.
Oh.
So I called Claire and I said, who's going to help me do this? Where do I go to record it? I mean,
Where do I go, Claire Martin? Who can help me, Claire Martin?
No, I didn't want her to. I just wanted her to direct me. I'm very independent. I just need to be pushed in the right direction. So she told me a guy who would record it and could mix it. And so I called him up and I said, I have 10 days in the autumn and I need to make a CD.
Yeah.
Now, I didn't know that was a relatively difficult task. I hadn't done it. You know, I thought you just go in and record it and that's that to that. I didn't realize what goes into mixing it and all the rest of it. So I never had a chance to really listen to the roughs. You know, you go in, you record it, then you have to re-record certain things, then you're trying to listen to the roughs, but you're exhausted. You've been in the studio for 12 hours. You're not going to go home and listen to yourself more. You need a day or two to get it out of your head and come back and listen to it. So somehow I made this CD, but it was stressful. It was exciting, but it was stressful.
And tell me, at the end of the week, you know, when you took away the final sort of, you know, mixed down copy, how were you feeling about what you'd produced at that point, at the end of the week?
Well, I think I was feeling good about it, but it all happened so fast. It's, you know, it's like being in an accident and people asking you what happened and you don't know because, you know, you were hit by a car and it happens too quickly for you to know. I was happy with it, but I was exhausted and I didn't know how it was going to, you know, I didn't know, it sounded good to me.
If you were to sit down now, if we sat down together and listened to that album from beginning to end, how would you feel about it now?
I've listened to it. I think that I'm a little bit more musical now. I've grown in terms of, in different ways I've grown. I like the CD, but if I had a chance to record all those songs on it again, I probably would do them differently. But I think that comes from performing them more and more. You know, by that point, it's not as if I had performed all of them 500 times and I knew exactly what I wanted to do with it. So
what did you do for musicians on that album?
I had piano, bass, and the studio where we were recording it was owned by Ralph Sammons, so Ralph played the drums for us, and it wasn't necessarily even organized. Then later I added flute and saxophone, and flute and saxophone, but they weren't in the recording studio.
And how was the process? Was it sort of all live with the band and you recorded in one space as if it was a sort of like a show, or did you record the vocals separately?
We recorded everything in the studio, which was in Welland Garden City, and then I re-recorded some of the vocals.
So you were in a vocal booth. You were recording at the same time, but your voice was isolated,
yes,
so that you could then go back and re-record little bits that you wanted
Absolutely.
to improve.
So it was a complete studio CD the first time out, and as I said, I found it a little stressful because I think partially because I put a lot of pressure on myself to finish it in a period of time which was completely unreasonable. And secondly, because I wasn't performing to anyone. And for me, you know, I'm not somebody, I love to sing when I'm getting dressed in the morning in the shower. It's probably my favorite place to work on shows. We have a glass shower, so if I don't know the lyrics, I tape them to the outside.
I do the same thing. I do the same thing.
It's fabulous. It's the best
I've
thing.
laminated them before, put them inside.
Oh, do you?
Yeah, I've done that before.
Oh, well, I wouldn't go to that much trouble. But I found I didn't like not performing to anyone, so when I did this CD, which is coming out soon, I decided I had to do it live. I wanted to do a live CD. Now, it came with its challenges too, which I didn't understand fully at the time. We did 2 recordings, 2 evenings in a row. And there are certain things you can't change when it's a live CD because there's spill onto other microphones and you can't get rid of certain other things.
Oh, so you can't, it's not as easy to sort of drop in the vocal. It's pretty much impossible, isn't it? It's all sort of there. What you get is what you get.
It's completely impossible. So
Much more real in a
but
way,
it's
isn't
real.
it?
And you have an audience, and you have the feel of a live venue. And I would do that again in a million years. To me, it's much more fun than singing in a room.
That suits you better. And so the main thing that I'm picking up from you that you learned from your first album experience was time, was allowing enough time.
Oh, yeah. I mean, 10 days is just ludicrous to try and record, mix, and get the whole thing done. So,
And I think a key thing for me is to be prepared, be so prepared. I mean, that you know what you're doing inside out, because whether you're recording a live CD, which means that you've really got one go at it, or however many goes you're going to record that show, or if it's in a studio, it's very expensive. It's not a time, unless you've got a very large budget and the luxury of all sitting there for 2 weeks in a country studio somewhere and you know, just lazing around and thinking, well, let's try this. But for most of us, studio time is very expensive, which means that we can't afford to be there for very long, so we have to get it right pretty much first time. It's all about the preparation, isn't it? And you must have felt that the same when you did your live show.
well, absolutely. I'm going to call it Preparation G because your book was all be prepared.
Yes,
I read my chat 100 times and then I do it 100 more times. Preparation G, it's going to be called. But yeah, I wasn't prepared enough. And you can never be over-prepared. I mean, you can, I mean, to some extent, you can get complacent if you're over-prepared, but I don't think we ever do.
What I learned is that the need to take my time, but since I've never had the money to spend ages in the studio, the albums that I've done, the studio albums that I've done subsequently, I've still recorded them in a very short time. But what I've done is say to myself, I'm not going to release this for at least 6 months. I am now going to put it away, and I'm going to schedule myself at least one more day in the studio to fix things in a few months' time. So I finish it, I put it away, I don't listen to it at all, I forget about it, I do other things, I go back to it in a few months' time, listen. Inevitably, I'm like, oh God, what was I doing with that track? Go back in and fix it, and then if I can, wait a little bit more as well. And I've found that by doing that, I can increase the longevity of the album, you know, because, all right, nothing's ever going to be perfect when you listen back, because hopefully we're always improving. But by spending a bit more time, it means that it's not an inevitability that I'm going to be disappointed with it.
But you know what I discovered just yesterday? There's a little bit of chat in the show, very little, on the CD, very, very little. But there's a lead-in to Love for Sale, where I say I have this fantasy that I want to be paid for it just once before I die. And it's the lead-in to Love for Sale. It's at the end of Moondance. Somehow, and I never heard the songs out of order. All of a sudden, I heard the songs out of order today, and that chat is at the end of Moondance. So when Moondance ends, I confess to the audience that I want to be paid for it just once, which has absolutely nothing to do with it. And when you get to the Love for Sale track, if you just start Love for Sale, there's no chat before it, and it just starts with Love for Sale.
It's an interesting question, actually, because I've just released a live album as well called Live in Brazil, and there's quite a bit of chat on there. I debated a long time, should I put the chat on or not? And it's a funny thing with live albums, because they I think a live show is quite different to what you would normally listen to on a CD. I personally tend to listen to CDs that suit a particular mood. I mean, if I want some background music, or if I'm working, or if I want to be dancing around, or whatever, I put the music on to suit that mood. But often in a live show, we're giving everybody all the emotions, aren't we? In a 45-minute, 50-minute set, we're taking people from heart-wrenching ballads up to happy, clappy music and making them laugh and so on. And it's not, for me, it's not normally the kind of thing that I would listen to. But with the chat, I couldn't decide, and people were telling me different things. Should I have them as separate tracks, or should I have them at the chat at the end of the preceding track, so that the next track starts right at the beginning of the song, or should it be the chat that you listen to at the beginning of a track followed by the song as part of the same track? In the end, I went for separate tracks, and a few people said, no, that's
Much
not a good
smarter.
idea. You think so?
Oh.
I still don't know, actually.
Well, all I can say is the chat for Love for Sale should not be at the end of Moondance. I don't know.
And you've still never been paid for it.
No, so- I don't know what they're going to think I want to be paid for either.
So you recorded the live thing, and then it had to go away and be mixed and so on. And of course, then the other thing to think about is artwork, isn't it?
Yes. I had a good designer, which I found through Barb Younger, and he did the CD design for both my CDs, and he's very quick, very, very quick.
And the practicalities of things like a barcode. What did you do about that? Do you have one? Do you
I have
need
a
one?
barcode.
Do you need one?
Well, you do if you want to sell your CD commercially, yeah. And you have to secure the music rights for all the cover songs.
That's via the MCPS and PRS, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's quite complicated, isn't it? I've done this many times, and every time, because maybe it's every 2 years I record an album, and I sigh, I think, oh, God, I've got to do this registering thing. It takes a long time faffing around, and we have to learn about ISRC codes.
I know, all of those things. I don't even know my ISRC codes.
These are special codes. You know what they are, though, don't you,
Yeah.
Alex? For those listening that don't know what they are, ISRC codes, I'll try and explain this, but it's probably the best thing just to Google it. It's a unique code which is given to every track. Each track has its own code number, and the code number is based on a series of letters and numbers. And the first letters of the code are the code that's been given to your record company, maybe one that you've started yourself, or whoever it is that's producing the CD. So my company is called Boss Entertainment. So Boss has got its own special unique code, and then there's a number that follows, which I think denotes the year that it's being made, and then there's another number that follows that, which denotes the track of that
so
year.
much more than I do.
Oh, actually, I've spent so much time doing this. And so you create these codes, and they have to be embedded by the people that are mastering the CD. They're embedded into the actual tracks, which is how iTunes and all these online vendors can identify the songs. This is how, when we put a CD in our computer and we want to, with Grace Notes, we CDDB, it somehow magically recognizes the CD that we've put into, it finds it on its database and downloads all of the track information. And you think, how does it do that? It's because of the ISRC codes. I used to think it was because it must add the track lengths, or there's something weird going on. I don't know how, but it's the ISRC codes, the unique identification codes for each track. So barcode, ISRC codes, we've got to register for MCPS, we've got to pay some money to license all of the tracks and make sure that we register who's written the tracks, and anything else?
Don't forget to give credit to all the people who helped you make it.
Oh, yes. And those dreary thank you things as well. Try not to be too gushy. That's my advice.
Yeah,
Don't thank everybody. We don't want an Oscar. We don't want any tears in the thank you notes.
I think it was Maureen O'Hara when she won the Oscar. I'd like to thank everyone I ever met in my entire life. That at least
Good night. That covers
clears it up.
And once you've made it, of course, same issue with doing a show or anything else that we produce. It's got to be sold, hasn't it? How do you go about marketing your CD?
Well, various ways. I compile what I call my ruthless self-promotion email list. So I'm always getting email lists. You promote it on Facebook, tweet it. I have a record producer in LA, so they have the catalog, they have a whole bunch of other things that they do. They promote it. They actually have shops in America,
That sell products?
that sell CDs, I guess. I don't know.
Don't have many of those here.
There aren't many anywhere. I didn't think there were any, but they need them for shops. And of course, the biggest place to sell these is at your gigs.
Yeah. Do you think it's important to have a record company? We all seem to start off in this business dreaming that Sony or Universal will come to us offering us a recording contract. Is that still something that we should aspire to?
Well, I think it becomes totally impractical for people like me. I mean, I don't
And
see-
me.
Yeah, I don't know. You're far more established than I am, but, I don't see where Sony or EMI would want me. Those are people who are on. My style isn't that style. Not to say that, it wouldn't necessarily be sellable someplace, somewhere, but my style is individual, and cabaret tends to be far less poppy, rocky, than the rest of the styles that you see these companies picking up.
But the big thing is getting distribution, isn't it? But it's easy now online, isn't it? Because you just register it with the right people. I use a company called Jazz CDs, and I give them the CD. People can buy the actual CD through mail order from their website, but at the same time, they take care of registering the CD with all of the download sites, and there's loads of them actually. I just think of maybe Amazon you can download, or iTunes, but there are probably a dozen of them or something.
Plenty, yes.
Yeah, where people and register with Spotify and so on, and they take care of all that, and I'm happy with that. I sell them on my shows, and then people buy a few from these different outlets, and I'm just happy to have my music out there.
Well, I was quite excited this time. I got download cards. I'd never had a download
that's nice,
card, and it's really great because you can sell them at gigs for people who don't want CDs. A lot of people keep their music digitally now, and they really don't know what to do with the CD. They'll download it and then toss it.
Do you sign the download cards for?
Well, I could, but it's like saving those gift cards you get, from M&S or whatever. So
Give
I
to
don't
somebody
know what
else.
people are going to do with it. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's only good for one download. It was a good trick to give it to someone
Yeah,
after you've already used it.
Yeah. So you think the future looks bright for cabaret, and I'm interested in how it compares the scene here to that in New York, because you're quite familiar with both.
Well, London is undergoing a renaissance which is unprecedented in my experience anywhere. We have the Matcham Room, which opened and seems to me to have slight lack of direction right now. But it
This is in the Hippodrome.
Yeah, it had an amazing first season.
Beautiful room.
Beautiful room, but they had the most amazing first season. I was so impressed with it, and now it's not busy every night. It's not booked every night. It seems to be a little bit of burlesque, a little bit of tribute acts, the occasional solo artist, some CD launches. Then you've got the Crazy Coqs, which is one of the most beautiful cabaret rooms in the world, and very intimate, where you can see every face because it's circular, as you know, because you work there. And you've got the St. James's Theatre, the studio at St. James's Theatre. You've got the Pheasantry, which replaced Pizza in the Park. So we have in London 4 proper, serious, grown-up cabaret rooms dedicated to more mainstream music-based cabaret. If you look in London, the alternative cabaret scene here is huge. Absolutely enormous. I can't even keep up with it.
The alternative, you're talking about sort of burlesque and that sort of
And
more, not
jugglers
so much
and-
just singing, anything but singing.
It has singing in it. It may have singing in it, but it'll be a mix. I don't know if you've seen the burlesque cabaret show that they do at the Savoy Hotel, but they do it once a month, every Sunday, I think it is, or once every 2 months on a Sunday. So there you have something which is a little bit of a hodgepodge. It's got music in it. It's got live music.
A
but
good
it's got-
old-fashioned variety show.
Yeah, it is a bit of a variety show. But for me, strangely, in the Savoy, which of all the rooms I've talked about, seems to be much more stodgy and, should be old-fashioned music sorts of stuff, and they're doing burlesque.
So we're doing quite well in London. How's the scene right now in New York?
It's falling apart a little bit.
Really?
Yeah.
Because I think I always had the impression that that the Americans, the New Yorkers, were showing us how it should be done. That it was cabaret was in their blood. But you think it's moving over here a little?
Well, the Algonquin Hotel closed, so the Oak Room no longer has cabaret. Andrea Marcovici, who you mentioned, she's considered the queen of cabaret in New York, and she always did 3 weeks at the end of the year. So she's moved up to the Cafe Carlyle, which is a lovely room.
Pricey.
So expensive. It is believable. I mean, that is what London has going, is our prices are not high. The Metropolitan Room started having a few issues with requiring people to bring in a certain number of people, so people stopped signing contracts. And they didn't want to work there anymore because, how can you commit that 75 people are going to come to see you? You hope 150 are going to come, but can you guarantee 75 are going to walk through the door? Can you ever guarantee that? Would you sign a contract where you guarantee it? No. So they've started changing their tune a little bit, but that meant it went from being sort of on a nice upper echelon to disappearing. Feinstein's of the Regency is closed. The hotel is undergoing renovation.
Why do you think the scene in New York is struggling?
I don't know. There's still, Don't Tell Mama is a fabulous venue. The Duplex is a great venue. There's the Laurie Beachman Theater is starting to pick up some of the slack. It's always been a really good venue, but it was never sort of in as much of the mainstream, I think. Now a lot of people are going to the Iridium, which is a jazz club really literally off Times Square. And what's nice about that is it has a little lighted billboard outside, so you get to see your name going by in lights.
We all want to see our name in lights.
Yeah, at most cabaret clubs, you never see your name going by in lights.
It's a dream come true.
You see you going by.
I noticed on your website, I don't know if you still are, if this is up to date, but it says you're the vice chairman of the board of the London Academy of Music and Dramatic Art, LAMDA. Is that true?
I was the vice chairman of Lambda until very recently. I stepped down. I'm still on the board. But I stepped down because we're embarking on a huge fundraising campaign, and the head of our fundraising subcommittee, it was going to be a much better move for him to be vice chairman, so he's taken over.
With the young people you see coming through LAMDA and on the scene, how do you feel about the future of cabaret now, particularly in this world that seems dominated by Simon Cowell and X Factor and Pop Idol and all the rest of it?
Well, we just had a Lambda away day yesterday, so I spent 8 hours with Lambda board members, and over lunch, the students came, and I didn't know we were going to have a musical performance, and we did, which was really, really good. And I had the opportunity to tell them personally about the open mic, and I was asking them about cabaret because, see, I think cabaret is a way, if you're a performer, if you're an actor or a singer, it's far more entrepreneurial than deciding you want to do a musical. Let's say you want to do a musical. What do you have to do a musical? There's costumes. I mean, not just, your suit to sing in. There's costumes, there's set design, there's 5 people, there's a much bigger orchestra. How many performers are there? It's an expensive proposition to mount a musical. It's not cheap to mount a cabaret show, but it's much cheaper. And it's something you can do on your own. And if you're a piano player and a singer, you don't even have to hire a musician. You can play. It's a very entrepreneurial way, and I think now actors really have to be thinking outside the box. They can't just be waiting for an agent to cast them in the next thing. Of course you want an agent, and you want your agent to cast you, but you've got to create your work yourself, too, if you want to keep busy and keep yourself out there. And it was interesting talking to them because there's no... Lambda doesn't really teach musical theater anyway, but they do a musical every year. But there's nothing in the curriculum about cabaret, and it's a very, very different art form than being in a musical. You've done both. So when you're in a musical, you inhabit a role. So whatever that role is, you're that person. You get out of yourself, and you become that person for those 2 hours, and then you're Gary Williams afterwards. When you go on stage, you're Gary Williams the whole time. And when you sing a song, you're Gary Williams, and you have to bring your experience as Gary to that song, and that's what makes it an emotional event. And so the art of cabaret is an art. It is a very different art, and it's not taught in the curriculum at Lambda. And I'm really interested in seeing if we can get that as part of the curriculum. Karen Akers was over a few years ago, and she did a master class for the students, which I set up, and it was really amazing and really useful for the students and really interesting to see. One young girl, 20 years old, brought the song from Ragtime about the baby that was dying, and I was thinking, you're 20 years old, you're not married. I mean, what experience do you have about this? Okay, if you're a musical theater actor, you can maybe try to do that, but you don't have that experience. And to me, that's why coming to Cabaret late, going all the way back to where you asked me at the beginning, coming to it in my 50s, I had life experience behind me, which makes interpretation of songs and understanding of them so much easier. This new show I'm doing soon, I had to sing In My Life, the Beatles song. There was no way I wasn't going to sing that song now, but you can't sing that song when you're 20, and you can't sing that song when you're 30, and you probably shouldn't sing it when you're 40. But when you're close to 60, you have had some life experiences, and you can talk about those things. You can't talk about all the places and the lovers you've had when you're 20. Well, you can try and think,
Might be a short song.
Yeah, exactly. So, no, I think it's, I wish the drama schools concentrated on it a bit more. Maybe they will with all these cabaret rooms around, who knows? But it's going to be my next bee in my bonnet is to make sure that we do some workshops at Lambda occasionally.
Hey, thank you so much, Harold, for talking to us today. And anybody that's listening who wants to attend the Crazy Coqs open mic night, they just turn up at the Crazy Coqs at Piccadilly Circus, 10 o'clock, and find you.
You can book your tickets online if you want, but you can pay on the door. It's £5. And even if you don't sing, even if you're just coming to watch, it's probably the best value entertainment in London to get 90 minutes of however many different people singing for £5. I mean, I don't know where else on earth you can get that. Really.
Thank you for listening to this Cabaret Secrets podcast. If you've got any comments or questions, please visit cabaretsecrets.com, where you'll also find details of the Cabaret Secrets book, an indispensable guide on how to create your own show, travel the world, and get paid to do what you love.